Okay guys, welcome back. Day 2, we're going to be able to find the area of a circle by applying our knowledge of equations and circles in general. So to start, you would look at your student-friendly lesson. You would answer the warm-up that's on circumference, which you guys should be able to do at this point after yesterday's lesson. Then it talks about the area of a circle. So the area of a circle is now going to be referring to the space inside of the circle as opposed to perimeter where we were only looking at the distance around the circle. Now we're looking about the space that takes up inside the circle. So the formula that we use for area of a circle is area equals pi r to the second power. Remember that r stands for radius, and we'll review how to raise something to the second power. So in a circle, when you are finding the area, you want to make sure that you have that radius provided. If I continue in the lesson, there is a modeled example for you. So again, you see that it says area equals pi r squared. In the example, you'll see that the radius is 14. So now we have our formula as a equals pi times 14 raised to the second power. Then it goes down to area equals 196 pi, and that's called in terms of pi. So let's just review how we got the 196. So if our radius was 14, like the example, and I'm going to write down the same thing that you see in your lesson. And as a reminder, anytime something's raised to the second power, that means they want you to take this number and multiply it by itself 2 times. So you do 14 times 14. Common misconception, students think it's 14 times 2. That's incorrect. It wants you to take 14 and multiply it by itself 2 times. And 14 times 14 will give you 196, which is where that came from that you see in the modeled example for you. If you are using a calculator, you could do raised to the second power. Sometimes you'll see a key that looks like this, and you'll get the 2 at the top of the 14. It'll like bounce up there if you're using a calculator, especially the one from school. Can't find mine. Oh, it's over here. Hold on. Okay. So if you're using the one from school, you could do 14 and then press that key that I just mentioned, the x squared key, and you'll see that pop up and also get 186. If you're not using a calculator like that, you could simply do 14 times 14. Or you could also do 14, press what's called the caret key. It looks like that. And then press 2. So I'll show you. You press 14. Okay, you press the caret key. For us, it's next to the 7 on this, and it bounces it up. You press 2, and again, you'll still get the 196. Some calculators, when you press that caret key, it just stays there, and the 2 stays the same height as the 14. It's okay. It's still doing the same function, so just don't get nervous if you see that. Okay, so we're at the a equals pi times 196. And then we do that calculation. So again, if you're using an iPhone and you turn your calculator horizontally, the pi key is available. I sent out that link yesterday for the pi calculator that you can use on the website I provided. If you have the calculator that we use in school, you could use this. As a reminder, if you are using this calculator and you see that pop up, you just press those 2 arrows above enter, and it will take it out of pi for you. So I'm going to write this here just to make sure I remember to go over that with you. This was 196 times pi. I just swapped it using the commutative property. And then we see on our calculator that equals 615.7521 ... Okay, so remember, it will always be an irrational because pi never ends, it never terminates. It does tell us to round, doesn't say to what, so we'll just round to the nearest tenth. So I'm going to just put my final answer here. A equals 615 point, this is a 7, the 5's next to it, The 5 would make the 7 bounce up 1 because 5 or more you go up 1. So my final answer would be 615.8, and it was meters. And now since we're in area, we raised the unit to the second power. So I feel like some people don't like it there, so I will put it next to the final answer. Meters squared. Okay, so this is our final answer if they asked us to round to a given place value. Sometimes they may just ask you to leave your answer in terms of pi. And what that answer would be is right here, this response here. It's when you've done all the calculations that you possibly could do and you still have pi in your answer. So this is again called in terms of pi. Okay, so 196 pi would be the area in terms of pi. 615.8 meters squared would be our area rounded to the nearest tenth. Okay, so that's your modeled example. Again, it's in the lesson. I just kind of broke it down for you, went over a few of the functions you would need to know on the calculator. And then the only other thing that comes up is, again, we would still be asked to find the area of a circle, which is A equals pi times radius squared. And then we would be provided a circle. And then sometimes, instead of a radius, they may give us a diameter. So in the lesson, for the we do, you'll see that we were given a diameter, and the diameter's measure is 12 centimeters. Now, we know that the diameter is 12, but the problem is that our area formula needs a radius. So based on our lesson from yesterday, we reviewed the relationship between diameter and radius. So if our diameter is 12, then we should remember that a diameter consists of 2 radius, which we call radii if it's plural. And the way we figure out what those radiuses are is by just splitting the diameter into 2 equal parts. So I'm sure some of you guessed it already. Our radius would be 6. Okay, so now that we have our radius, now we can find the area of this particular circle because our formula needs radius. So I'm going to plug in my value. A equals pi times, we're going to use the radius, so 6 squared. Okay, so again, if you're using your calculator, you do 6 squared first by either pressing the caret key or the x squared key, or you could just simply do 6 times 6, which we should all know is 36. Okay, so then I just rewrite this with that number there. I usually like to rewrite it where the number is in front of pi just because it looks mathematically nicer. And now remember, this answer would be our final answer if they asked for it in terms of pi. But we are not going to find it in terms of pi because in the we do, it asks us to round to the nearest tenth. So we're going to take this answer, A equals 36 pi. I'm going to plug it into my calculator. Again, you can use the calculator link I sent you on the stream. If you just scroll down, you should see it there. So our answer is 113.097 ... I don't really need any more if we're rounding to the nearest tenth. So to round to the nearest tenth, I go to my tenths place, it's a 0. I look at the 1 next to it, which is a 9, bounces up to 0 because it's 5 or more. So my final answer will be 113.1, and the units again were centimeters, but since we are in area, it's going to be centimeters squared. Okay, so there's my final answer. I'm still in my pajamas. I see some of you looking. Okay, so that's it modeled for you. You're going to go through the lesson. The rest of the lesson I'll show you. Okay, there is a you-do for you to practice. There's 4 additional problems for you to practice on your own. And then what you'll do is you'll go back to day 2. Let me see if I could get it for you. Yes, okay. So you go back to day 2. You then check your answers on the answer key lesson. This is where you can find all the answers and the work that we just did. See, like here's our we do that I just walked you through. Okay. Once you're done with that, then you can move on to your practice sheet. Okay, and then once you finish your practice sheet and you submit it, then you will also do your homework. So I just want to go over one thing for the practice sheet. I know that some people are having issues with their answers when they submitted them yesterday because maybe they were writing out the full unit, or maybe they were using a capital letter instead of a lowercase letter, different like silly things like that. So for every example, I put with the question, round your answer to the nearest tenth. So I just modeled 2 for you that are rounded to the nearest tenth. So like let's say this would be a answer because I rounded to the nearest tenth. Tenths place is 1 digit after the decimal. And then the way you want to put your units in, you're going to click space, right? You're going to write your units in abbreviated form. You don't need to put a period after them. Just put the units in abbreviated form. So this would be inches abbreviated. You're then going to press the caret key so that that indicates that you know that that unit is going to be raised to, and then press 2. If you submit your answer in this format, then you should get the correct answer if you calculated correctly and, of course, rounded to the correct tenths place. Okay, so I think that might clarify some of you that were struggling to get those answers incorrect and couldn't figure out why. I did try to put that helpful reminder to hopefully avoid those problems again. All right, so the only other thing I want to leave you with is please make sure to submit your attendance. You can do that before even going into the lesson for the day. So the order should be you go to your classwork tab, you look at week 1, day 2, March 24th, fill out your attendance, click submit, go to the student-friendly lesson, go through what I just showed you, check your work against the answer key lesson, optional links for support if needed. The calculator link is in this document if needed. Then you would complete your practice sheet, and then you would also complete your homework. Make sure you submit all 3 of these top 3 so that we can give you your grades for the day. Okay, thanks 7th grade. Bye.